All right, welcome to Underground Catholicism. I'm Elijah Yossi. As always, I am your host. Sorry to keep you guys waiting. I had my mic and my camera in my suitcase because I was out of town, and I brought it with me because I was supposed to do a show, which I wasn't able to do when Father Enquito was on Reason and Theology, talking about Chaldean Catholicism or Chaldean Rite Catholicism, and I highly recommend you check out that show if you haven't. Some good stuff there. Looking at everyone here in the chat. What's up, William? Longinus of Jerusalem, Orthodox girls love and adore me, gonna cry. That's somebody's username, by the way, in case you're not watching the live chat. Bryson, always good to see you on here. So today we're going to be answering question that I have been seeing popping up a lot, and it's not a very good question, to be honest with you. And one of the first reactions I got when I put up this video here, this is something that I'm just doing here out of the blue here, just off the cuff, right? I have nothing prepared. I just wanted to do this video because Sona debated or had a discussion against, or I guess with, will be Petrus on Swan's channel. So they had two discussions. One was like a debate on scriptural papacy, if the papacy is scriptural or not. And that was on Ubi Petrus's channel. And then they did another one where it was on Swan's channel. And that one was more of, a back and forth dialogue discussion. And it was very friendly. And I can appreciate that a lot. So you can see the video right there. I have it up on the screen, and I hope you guys are going to be able to hear it. I'm not very good with this tech stuff. I'm still learning this stuff. But I'm going to play a clip here that Ubi brings up, and he basically asked the question, if papal infallibility is true, then why do you need ecumenical councils? So, let me go ahead and start the video here, and I'm going to play a few seconds, and y'all, if you can let me know if you can hear it, I'd appreciate that. So here we go. Did you guys hear that at all? Let me know if you heard it. No sound. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch this up. Here's what I'm going to do. Let me switch this up here and see if I can get it to work this way. Okay. All right, here we go. Let's see if this works. Let me know if this works.
As the beginning statement. The other thing is that, and I know this comes off as a trite argument, but
any sound there at all? And if you can't hear it, I'll just summarize it. It's really not that complicated or anything special, but I just wanted to play it. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play that. Hopefully you guys can hear it clearly. Let me go back, and here we go.
Statement. The other thing is that, and I know this comes off as a trite argument, but we have ecumenical councils for a reason. If the Pope can simply speak infallibly, why doesn't he just send a letter out to some bishops from whom he wants advice, looks at what they have to say, and then makes a decree on his own? I mean, really, if God is going to protect him from error, why doesn't he do that? Why go through the trouble of bringing all these bishops to Rome or to whichever council to pull them away from their flocks for months and years at a time, if all you could do is just write a few letters, get some advice, and then make a decree? It's not a coincidence that the one council that came after Vatican I was a pastoral council. That's how we look at it. Now, I could be proven wrong. I mean, maybe Pope Francis will call a council and.
Okay. Can you all hear me still? Just want to make sure y'all can hear me before I answer this genius question here. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Thomas. So, and I'm sorry if that wasn't very clear. Basically, what he's saying, if the Pope is infallible, why do we need to? Why does the Catholic Church even have ecumenical councils? And if the Pope can just decree something, why waste time? Why waste time about the bringing everyone together and holding councils? And he says, like, he can seek the advice of the bishops, but at the end of the day, he doesn't need to take that advice of the bishops. And we're speaking here in the context of ecumenical councils and papal infallibility, right? So, and then he also says that there's a reason why the Catholic Church has only had one ecumenical council after Vatican I, which was pastoral. So what he's trying to say is, now that we have papal infallibility in the Catholic Church, we no longer need ecumenical councils because the Pope can just decree something infallible and voila, no more need of it. He's very selective. I mean, how often does the Church usually hold ecumenical councils? I mean, what is he expecting here? I mean, prior to Vatican I, the ecumenical council that was held was in Trent, which was in the early 16th century. What is that, like 350 years later, then we have another ecumenical council? So we don't have them often, right? And Trent and Vatican I both dealt with dogmatic matters, and Vatican II didn't really deal with dogmatic matters. It was pastoral. So it's not because we have papal infallibility that we don't have that we didn't have a dogmatic council. I think Vatican II wasn't dogmatic because it was a council that was trying to bring the church to the world, right? And so it's not going to put a bunch of anathemas out there. It's supposed to be a friendly council to where it opens its doors to the world and say, hey, we're not that bad. It has nothing to do with papacy. It has nothing to do with papal infallibility. That's not why it wasn't dogmatic, right? But anyway, I digress here. I just wanted to address that point. But I do want to answer the question. Why do we need an ecumenical council in the Catholic Church if the Pope is infallible? Well, if you want a detailed answer, my first two videos that I address Ubi Petrus, I answer that question in great detail, right? So that's part 1 and part 2. I spend a lot of time answering that question, but I wanted to make a video because I see this question come out a lot, and I don't expect somebody to watch 5 hours of my video, which is I think how long total is between the two videos. It's 5 hours just to get an answer to this question. And when I put out this video, like I said earlier, when I put out this video, people were like, "Are you serious? Like, you need to answer this question? Like, this is textbook stuff." I literally got somebody saying that on the Reason and Theology Discord. So let's go ahead and answer the question. Okay. So papal infallibility, and by the way, before I answer this question, I know I'm dragging this out, but before I answer this question, I just want you to pay attention to this. Ubi Petrus is asking this question. Who is the person who's trying to tell you about papal infallibility? Who's trying to refute Catholicism with his videos, with his blogs? He's trying to refute Catholicism, and you're going to see after I finish this video how little he understands the church, Catholic Church, how little he understands it. So let's go ahead and first talk about what papal infallibility is, which we've done in our first two videos, but I'm going to summarize this, everything summary. Papal infallibility is what we call a negative gift, not a positive gift. What does that mean? It's a negative infallibility. It means like the Pope isn't necessarily led into some sort of revelation, right? He doesn't know all the answers. So papal infallibility is the Pope. He's supposed to, He's supposed to seek the mind of the church. He's supposed to seek what the mind of the church is before he decrees, right? Because he's supposed to decree what the consent of the church is, meaning that he can only decree what the church has always taught. He can't go outside of that. That's Vatican I. It says that literally in there. And if you want sources and references, watch my first two videos. I put them out there. This is all just summaries, right? And so he's supposed to go seek the mind of the church. And the one way to do that is to poll the bishops, right? Or ask the bishops, ask the advice of the bishops. Hey, what does the church believe about this teaching or whatever it is that he's about to declare? So, he doesn't have all the answers. It's not like a slot machine, or it's not like automatic where if the Pope wanted, let's say there's a question out there in the church, and the Pope now is looked to answer that question. It's not like just because now he's looked to answer that question that automatically God's going to give him the revelation of what the answer is. That's not how it works. Negative infallibility, negative gift, the negative gift of infallibility, it means that the Pope is prevented from speaking in error when he decrees. Okay, that means, let's say the Pope has a heresy in his mind that he wants to decree and bind the whole church to. It's not like when he's about to decree this heresy, God comes in and steps in and says, nope, I'm sorry, I'm going to change your mind before you speak this heresy. Before you speak this heresy, I'm going to change your mind to where now you're going to say the orthodox doctrine. That's not how it works. If he's about to decree heresy, he would be impeded from making any declaration, meaning that he's not going to make a declaration, right? So why is this important? The reason why this is important is before the Pope decrees anything, he has a moral obligation to go and look at all the sources in front of him, scripture, tradition, the present preaching of the magisterium, which is what Gasser says. The present preaching of the magisterium is a rule of faith even for ex cathedra's, right? So he's supposed to seek that consent from the bishops, and seeing and by the way, this is how it ordinarily works, right? Or there are extraordinary situations where that may not be possible, right? And so if you watch my first two videos, I go into great detail about the necessity of polling bishops. It's not an absolute necessity, meaning he doesn't absolutely have to poll the bishops every time he decrees an ex cathedra, but ordinarily that's how it works. And he has a moral obligation to do that, meaning that if he doesn't do that, it is something that is morally sinful on his part, unless it's something obvious, right? Like I gave an example on my videos, like Pope John Paul II, when he decreed on female ordinations, as far as female being priestess, he doesn't need to go seek the consent of the bishops or poll them. I mean, come on now, we never had a female priest before, so that's an obvious answer. The scripture and the tradition is very obvious. So now, since it's a negative infallibility, it means he's prevented. Okay. So here's a situation where you have a question that rises up in the church, right? And so now you're saying, okay, well, why can't the Pope just answer the question, which is what Petrus is proposing here. If you believe in papal infallibility, why don't you just answer the question rather than having a council? Because if he doesn't have all the answers, he's not going to be able to answer the question. He needs to go and seek that answer from the church. What is the mind of the church? What does the church believe? Before I decree this as a pope, I need to know if this is something that the church believes before I decree it. How do I do that? I go look at what the bishops universally teach, because if the bishops all teach something, agree on something, then that's what we call, the sensus fidelium. That means everybody in the church, from the layman to the priest to the bishops, all believe this, therefore it must be true. And so that's when he seeks the mind of the church, and then he decrees that. But notice it's not an automatic thing, right? It's not like, hey, just because there's a question, God's going to give the Pope an answer. It's not revelation. It's a divine assistance. It's a divine assistance, meaning that the Pope is assisted by the church to where they make him know the mind of the church, and he seeks that consent. He seeks that understanding. Hey, what do we believe, church? What do we believe, bishops? And the bishops tell him, and he gets that information, and he looks at scripture, he looks at tradition, he looks at the bishops, he looks at the fathers, he looks at the saints, the doctors, and he looks at everything, all the sources that he has. He looks at everything, and then he comes to a conclusion. Okay, well, I just looked at everything, and that's why he has a moral obligation to do this. He has a moral obligation, and that's a very serious thing. It's a moral obligation because he doesn't have the answer automatically, and so he needs to go seek that answer from the church. And when he gets that answer, now he can decree it. So he just held an ecumenical council, in a sense, by getting the whole church involved in the decision making without holding an ecumenical council. This is what happened with the Immaculate Conception and the Assumption dogmas when the Pope decreed it. Before he did, he was petitioned before both cases, same thing. He was petitioned by the church saying, hey, hey, Pope, we want you to decree this. And the Pope, in return, said, well, I'm going to go ahead and poll the bishops to see if this is the mind of the church. He polls the bishops poll the priests poll the congregation. The congregation of the priests' churches answer back to the priest and say, we believe and confess, right? We believe this dogma. And then the priests take that to the bishops take that to the Pope. And so now the whole church was involved in the decision-making, because the Pope cannot decree anything that the church doesn't believe. And so he needs to go see if the church believes it before he decrees it, okay? Now, like I said, there could be instances where the Pope already knows the answer. So he doesn't need to go seek the bishop's consent when it's that obvious. And so now what about when you have divisions in the church, right? Like let's say like not everybody agrees, not everyone's playing nice. You have two camps, right? Camp A and Camp B. That's when papal infallibility becomes very beneficial, right? When you have a split in the church, even if you were to hold a council, you'll have some of the bishops saying one thing and some of the bishops saying another thing. So who's going to be right? And so the Pope looks at both cases, both situations, the same way, that Pope Celestine did with Nestorius and St. Cyril. He looked at both cases and he sided with the Orthodox position, the St. Cyril one, right? And you had Nestorius's followers and you had St. Cyril's followers, which was, probably the majority of the church were behind St. Cyril. And that really helped the Pope make that decision. But let's say it's like 50-50 and you had a Nestorius and a St. Cyril, and then you had a Pope Celestine, and you're like, okay, well, if I'm Pope Celestine, who do I go with? It's split in half. And so that's where the Pope looks at both cases, looks at scripture, looks at tradition, and then decides which one is the Orthodox one, which one is the ancient one, right? Which one is the ancient position, right? But he's not acting alone, because it's not like A and B are the two options and he goes with option C. He has to go with either A or B, because there can never be a time where all the bishops in the world fall into a heresy and the Pope is the only Orthodox bishop, because that's what option C would suggest. That means all the bishops on side A are heterodox and all the bishops in side B are heterodox, and there are no bishops left, and the only one left is now the Pope, and he sides with option C, and option C is the Orthodox one. That can't happen. That's impossible. So it's going to be either A or B. That's the truth. And the Pope is going to act with his brother bishops, with the group A or group B. I hope I'm not confusing you, but bottom line, I just want to say, that the Pope does not have a positive gift of infallibility, meaning he's not led into that truth, right? So when Ubi says, why can't you just write a letter to the Pope and the Pope answers a question? Oh, come on. I mean, that's not how it works. And you as a, and let me go ahead and get rid of this. You as someone, and when I say you, I mean Ubi, who is out there trying to refute Catholics and trying to tell us what Catholics believe by quoting Gasser and Vatican I. If you can't even understand why that's a stupid question, and I'm sorry, it's a stupid question. There's no, I'm not going to filter that. And it's only stupid if you claim to know as much as Ubi claims to know. You're making videos about the Catholic Church. You must know about the Catholic Church. Now, it's not stupid for someone who doesn't know about the Catholic Church, who doesn't make videos out there, who doesn't claim to be this, this, I guess, authority in this topic. So if you don't know the answer to this question, you shouldn't be refuting Catholics, because this is simple stuff. You should know this. If you are trying to refute us, you should know this. So now go back to the drawing board. Here's why we can't just go to the Pope every time there's a question in the church. It's because he doesn't have all the answers. He needs to go seek the answers. And that's a way of having an ecumenical council. That's one way the infallibility of the Pope works. He holds an ecumenical council so he can see what the mind of the church is. Hey, bishops, what do we believe about this? Let's all have a council together. Oh, that's what we believe? Okay. I see what you're saying here. I see that this fits with Scripture. And since you're consenting to this, I'll be consenting to this as well. And so there you have the head and members working together, consenting together. It's not the Pope just seeking the advice of the bishops and then taking that advice and saying, well, thanks for the advice, guys, but I think I'm going to throw everything you're saying here, and by myself, I'm going to decree something alone. That's not possible, because that means he would be the only Orthodox bishop. That's impossible. The Catholic Church doesn't believe that the Pope could ever be the only Orthodox bishop in the world. So I hope that answers the question. And that question also came up on the show today on Matt Fradd with Swan Sona, which I highly recommend you go check out. Swan Sona is, in my opinion, the best apologist for the Catholic Church in terms of papacy, scriptural papacy apologetics, right? He's one of the best. I mean, in my opinion, he's the best. I mean, he's just phenomenal. And it's the fact that he's only been a convert to the Catholic Church for about a year that blows my mind. But I mean, he was a Protestant, so Protestants are very well informed about what the scriptures say, even though they don't understand it the right way. But at least, like, he knows the scriptures, he's read the scriptures, and so he's able to put it all together beautifully and show where the papacy is in Scripture, not just Matthew 16 and Luke 22 and John 10:20. I'm talking about, Isaiah 22, how it matches with Matthew 16, how it links, and the whole new Moses, Peter being the new Moses. So, and all that stuff, he goes into the typology of the papacy. It's beautiful. I highly recommend you check it out. Matt Fradd's channel. Go on there and check out Swan Sona's video on there. So, any questions? Let me see if there were any questions here. I don't think I saw any. I don't see any questions. So I hope that answers everything. So just to reiterate in a quick summary, the Pope cannot just answer questions about what the church believes because he doesn't have all the answers. He needs to go seek the answers, right? And he does that by seeking the answers from the bishops. Okay, so Zarkar says the debate is not available anymore. It would be put it behind Patreon. Well, I'm not talking about the debate, but I did mention the debate. I did mention the debate earlier, and it would be made half the debate free and the other half you have to be a Patreon, which I think is unfortunate because a lot of people can benefit from that debate. I think both sides did well. I think both sides presented their positions really well, and it would be nice if people could have access to that. Anyway, let me see here. Can you please, Elijah Yossi, can you please debate Ubi Petrus? He seems like a nice dude based on his chat with Swan and Sona. I'm going to leave that there. Well, okay, so I'm not going to debate Ubi Petrus. First of all, as you can see here, he doesn't even understand the Catholic Church's teaching. So why would I debate somebody who doesn't even understand it? I'd be debating somebody who is knocking down a straw man. He's not really dealing with the Catholic Church. He's dealing with his figment of imagination version of it, right? He's making it up in his mind, and then he's refuting that. He's not refuting my church. He's refuting his own version of my church. So that's one reason why I wouldn't debate him. I can't even agree with him on what papal infallibility is. He thinks it's one thing that it's not. So we would have a debate on what papal infallibility is, not on proving papal infallibility or disproving it. Number two, he hasn't been charitable at all to the Reason and Theology crew, Eric Ibarra and Michael Lofton and William Albrecht. So out of respect for those guys, I'm not going to be engaging with him one-on-one. I will, and again, I told you guys this from the beginning. My ministry is it's for Catholics, right? It's not a ministry that I'm going after Eastern Orthodox. I'm not going after Eastern. I'm only going after Ubi Petrus because he's deceiving so many Catholics. And so I'm clarifying the teachings about the Catholic Church so that he's not deceiving people. And so that, you're getting a clear answer as to what the Catholic Church teaches from the horse's mouth and not from me. As you guys see in my videos, I'm quoting popes, bishops, theologians, scholars, historians. I'm quoting people that know the history behind Vatican I and Vatican II. So yeah, I'm not going to debate him. Now, I said this before, I would be willing to debate him if he removes his mask, because I think that's still very creepy that he has a mask on and he has a voice changer. He kind of sounds like that dude from Hey Arnold that breathes hard, and then he gets smacked in the glasses by what was her name? Olga. I can't remember. I used to watch that when I was little. Helga or Olga. I can't remember the little Swedish person. The way he's breathing hard. Anyway, I'm not interested in debating him unless he removes that mask and he shows some charity towards Eric and Michael and William and the Reason and Theology crew. So with that said, I hope that answers your question. And as you can see, I'm not really afraid of dealing with his arguments because I think his arguments, and you'll see I have a video coming up where I'm going to be going into the patristics, where I build a foundation in my first two videos of what the Catholic Church teaches. And now in my third video, I'm going to go into the patristics and prove the Catholic Church's position based on the foundation I just laid. So don't watch part 3 if you haven't watched part 1 and part 2, because you're not going to understand what I'm talking about. Because you need to see what the foundation is I laid in part 1 and part 2 as to what the Catholic Church teaches on papal infallibility. And that's what I'm going to be proving. I'm not going to be proving what Ubi Petrus thinks the Catholic Church teaches on papal infallibility, which is this like King Kong version of the papacy, right? Okay, so here's a question. Is it your position that the Pope has never been heterodox during his lifetime? Asking for Bryson. Well, it depends on what you mean by hetero. I mean, do you mean like a private? If you're talking about like the Pope as a private person, he could be a heretic, right? That could happen. he could be corrected, and then he could change his mind, and then go into orthodoxy, like Pope John the 22nd was. He had the wrong teaching on the beatific vision, and then he was corrected by his brother bishops, and then he accepted that correction. That was his private opinion. He never decreed that and bound the whole church to that thing, right? So he can't be a public heretic in any time in his life, meaning that he can't. That means he can't decree something publicly that is a heterodox. He can only decree something that's orthodox. That's what we believe. So I hope that answers your question. So you have to distinguish between private and public heretic. Let me see here. Let me see if there are any more questions. I don't see any. Let's see here. Can you comment on appeals to the Pope? Oops, sorry, wrong one. Ryan Pope, always appreciate having you here, Brother Ryan. Can you comment on appeals to the Pope above an ecumenical council? Can you comment on appeals to the Pope above an ecumenical council? So we have to first define what an ecumenical council is. An ecumenical council is where head and members get together, Pope and bishops, and they decree something, right? At the end of the day, no matter what the details of the council is, at the end of the day, the Pope and the bishops act together and decree something, whether it's the Pope coming down like Pope Leo did in the 5th century and putting down his tome and saying, you guys are all going to accept this or else, and they all accept it. And then we have a ecumenical council that we have a 4th ecumenical council to where the head and the members acted together. And so you have to understand that in order to have an ecumenical council, you have to require a Pope's consent, right? The Pope has to consent to it. He has to put his stamp of approval to what the bishops decided. And that's not to say that the Pope's vote is the only thing that matters, because when you have the Pope and the bishop sitting together in a council and there's dialogue, it's not like everyone's sitting there bowing down to the Pope or, sitting there at his feet saying, hey, Mr. Pope, what should we believe here? Vatican I makes it clear that the bishops at the council are the judges of the faith. Vatican II makes it clear that the bishops are judges of the faith, not just, sitting there as the vicars of the Pope. They're actual judges. That means they have real authority. Their vote really matters. So that means the Pope can't just decree something in complete opposition to the whole church. That's impossible. Like I said, the Pope cannot be the only Orthodox bishop in the church. That's impossible, right? So you have to have bishops that would have to agree with him naturally and organically. That's always going to happen. That's providentially what's gonna take place. And I appreciate Alan Rule being here. It's always nice to have you. And Mango Bango for being on here. I know I've talked to you before. But anyway, I digress here. What was I? Oh, yeah, I was answering the question right in front of me. So if an ecumenical council is Pope and head, Pope and members together acting, then you can't have an ecumenical council without the Pope. So to say, can you comment on, I'm sorry, to say that, to have an appeal to the Pope above an ecumenical council, that would be like appealing to the Pope above himself, because it's not an ecumenical council unless the Pope consents to it. Now, what I think you're trying to say is, correct me if I'm wrong, is let's say the church is holding a council of bishops and the Pope didn't put a stamp of approval in there. If the Pope doesn't put a stamp of approval in there, can they appeal to the Pope? Or basically if the Pope is not behind that council, but then that wouldn't be an ecumenical council. That would just be a council or a synod of bishops, right? And so, yes, yeah, you can. I was thinking about the Council of Ephesus. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. So Let me go ahead and show that here. So the Council of Ephesus 449, and I know Thomas is in here, but that's not an ecumenical council for us, as you know, Ryan. And so because the Pope did not put his stamp of approval, and so you can't have an ecumenical council without the head bishop of the church consenting to it. So that's my point here. And so it wasn't an ecumenical council. So that way now the Pope is appealed to. And that's why he wanted a new council, because his consent is necessary to have an actual ecumenical council. You can't just make up something in Alexandria. I don't care how many bishops are there, which, obviously weren't as many as what Chalcedon had. But it doesn't matter how many bishops are there. If the Pope is not behind that council in any way, if he's not consenting to those decrees, it cannot be an ecumenical council. It cannot be binding universally. Okay. So yes, you do need to appeal to the Pope, which is what was done in that whole ordeal with the what's his name, Flavian did. He appealed to the Pope. Eutychus appealed to the Pope, and then the Pope decided to write his tome against Eutychus, or however you say his name. Defeating the heresy of Eutychianism or whatever that was, as far as what the word is for it. But basically and I don't want to offend the Oriental Orthodox, but he basically believed in one nature, but not the same version that Oriental Orthodox believe. The Oriental Orthodox version is more nuanced than what Eutychius was saying. So read as Alan is suggesting, read the Flavian letters in 449. They're fascinating, and I'll be showing those letters in my patristic videos that I'll be doing. And I don't want to go into too much detail, and this is already getting longer than I anticipated making. But at least I answered the question in the first part of the video. So if anybody wants to just watch that, they're free to do that without looking at these questions. But I'm not going into details about this because I don't like to say things without having my sources behind me, right? Because, I'm not an expert in these topics in the sense where I can just sit here and teach about it, because I'm afraid of making mistakes. So what I like to do is I like to have everything prepared. That's why I have PowerPoint. That's why I have quotes. And I like to go off of my shows being on, flowing through those quotes that, I show those quotes and then we talk about them. Where this is not just coming from me. But I'm just generalizing the answer here. But I will get into great detail about your question, Ryan, on my show that I'll do here, the upcoming one on the patristics, because I will be dealing with that time frame, that time period, I should say, of 448 to like 451, because I'm going to be going into Chalcedon, right? And obviously Ephesus 2 is a huge part of that whole thing. Let me see if I have any more questions, and I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question sufficiently here. But let me see what I got here. And make sure you tag me when you ask me questions, because I probably won't catch it. There's a lot of people talking here, which I don't mind. Yeah, and check out Alan Rule's YouTube page. It looks like, check out Alan Rule's YouTube page. He recently just did a video on the Papacy with, I think, John Fisher 2.0. Check that out. Check out the video he has with Eric Ibarra. Alan Rule has a great YouTube channel. Make sure you go there and subscribe to it. He puts out some great stuff. Let me see what else we have here. Here's so somebody asks, why are the church fathers silent on papal supremacy? I don't think they're silent on papal supremacy, but this is not a show on that, so I'm gonna save that question for my show that I'll do in the future about patristics, which is coming up. I think it's on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, but y'all can check out my YouTube page and it'll have the date on it. And there's the question here from Mango Bango. And then here's another question. Have you seen the video Peter Diamond made on Ubi Orthodoxy? I have not. I didn't even know they made one. I know they made one on Jay Dyer. I didn't know they made one on Ubi. But it sounds semi-interesting. I appreciate the suggestion there. Did the Pope have supremacy over the bishops in Nicaea 1? I mean, as a Catholic, you would say yes to that question, but I don't think Nicaea is where you want to go to show the supremacy of the Pope. I think the best place to go is Ephesus 1, Chalcedon 1. Chalcedon is the only one. There's no Chalcedon 2. So Chalcedon and the 6th and 7th ecumenical councils. As far as ecumenical councils go, obviously there's other places where you can show the supremacy of the Pope from the fathers, from history. The Council of the Council of Sardica is one of them. That's a good one to look at, but that's not an ecumenical council. So I already answered that, kind of, sort of. I didn't really answer it because I don't want to get into that today. But just to, and I know this is overused by Catholics, and I'm not saying this proves papal supremacy, but if you just look at Irenaeus saying every church must agree with Rome, I think that is a reference, or at least an allusion, or it alludes to papal supremacy, right? Let's put it that way. So, you have to understand, we as Catholics believe in this development of doctrine, which organically develops. So you're not just going to see a full-blown Vatican I in the 1st century. If you're looking for that, you're not going to see that. You're also not going to see much of that many dogmas explicitly full-blown in the 1st century, right? Like Protestants are always honest about, show me in the 1st century where they believed in the perpetual virginity of Mary. I mean, you can go to the scriptures, right? But then that's debated. I know William does a good job with that with Father Capus. But there's a lot of things that are just like, they're just seeds in the church, and then they expand and they grow, and then we get an understanding of it as time goes by. And not to say that we know better than the first Christians, but they didn't have time to deal with these questions, right? They were persecuted in the first 300 years of the church. So we're not going to expect full-blown dogmas written down and like, here's what we believe. We believe the Pope is infallible, all that stuff. We look at history, which is not perfect, and we get from the history we deduce what did the church believe in the early times. And so the best place to go is the fathers, and that's what I'll be doing in the future. So I don't want to make the show about that and then defeat the whole purpose of the next show. Let me see if there's any more. I scrolled up, so I'm sorry if I haven't gotten into your questions, if you have any new ones here. So let me go back and see. Go down. It's so funny to me that Thomas and John Colarafi have been going at it in the live chats in the last few days. It's pretty interesting to see. Alan Rule says, I think Vatican I is evident in the first 3 centuries. I agree. I agree with that. Once you understand Vatican I and the proper understanding of it, you can find that in Vatican in the first 3 centuries. But what I mean is, you're not going to find the explicit form of it, like full blown in your face, like, okay, that's obviously what it is. You know what I mean? So I think by the time you get to Ephesus 1, that's where it's more explicit. That's where it's more explicit, because the Pope, for the first time on a universal level, gets involved in dogmatic matters. So now we get to see how he's perceived, how he's looked at, how the church looks at him, how the church sees him, how he sees himself. Now I would say that the popes in the early church, the first popes, if you go to them, you could see Vatican I almost very clearly. And I'm talking about like in the first, you can even go what Alan is saying, the first 3 centuries, what they teach. It's almost like full-blown Vatican I. Not only is it almost full-blown, they go further. It seems they go further than Vatican I. Vatican I is taming the authority of the Pope almost. It's almost taming it, because there's these neo-ultramontanists who are trying to give the Pope as much power as possible, and Vatican I's like saying, nope, sorry, that's not how it works. But these popes in the first few centuries, they seem to be claiming so much, and when I read them, I'm like, man, this makes Vatican I seem very tamed, right? But that even though those are Eastern Orthodox saints, and even some of them Oriental Orthodox saints, the East is looking for the reception of that type of teaching from those popes. They're looking for that reception, because both the East and the West have to accept that teaching as far as the East goes. Now, and that's where the debate is, right? That's where the debate is. The popes claimed it. Did the church receive it? How do the Catholics answer that? How does the Eastern Orthodox answer? Now, there's some Eastern Orthodox who are very polemical, and it's like, oh no, they didn't claim that. The popes did not claim that, which I think is silly. Which you even have like Anglican scholars admitting that, which they have no reason to do that. Let me see here. This is going a lot longer. I thought I was going to go 10 minutes. We're almost at an hour. Well, 46 minutes here. So not that I mind, and I appreciate the exchange. I appreciate the questions. If you have a Facebook message, Elijah Yossi privately. I'll probably check out a Catholic church this weekend. We'll see. Mango, I'm not really sure what you are as far as your faith goes. All I know is I think you're seeking, and I would just to give you some advice. And this is the frustrating part as Catholics today. I think, and obviously this is a show where I'm promoting Catholicism because I'm Catholic, and I want to make sure everyone who is Catholic stays in the church. But if you are outside of the church, my videos can still be beneficial to you. I say that because I want you to be Catholic, right? I believe the Catholic Church is the one true church. Now, what the frustrating thing about the Catholic Church today and us as Catholics is, it's almost like all the modernisms that happen in the local churches makes it very difficult for people like for us Catholics today, right? To say, hey, look, come on in, the water is fine, when the water is not fine. So I'll be honest with you. It's not all rainbows and butterflies here. You probably know that, but it's not all rainbows and butterflies anywhere, right? Every church has its issues. And one thing I would recommend is to stick to the dogmas of the churches. What did the dogmas of the churches teach from Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy, Catholicism, Protestantism? Stick to the dogmas, stick to the teachings, and then see if those teachings are backed by the fathers in the scriptures. Like, for example, the Filioque, Purgatory, the Immaculate Conception. Do the fathers teach those things? Do the scriptures teach those things? And if so, then, I don't know how you can be Eastern Orthodox. Some people ask me, why don't you become Eastern Orthodox? It's a lot easier. I'm not looking for easier. I'm looking for the truth. The truth is not always easy. So to me, I'm looking at it as the fathers, as far as what I'm convinced of, the fathers taught the papacy the way the Catholics believe it. The fathers taught the Filioque. The fathers taught purgatory. The fathers taught, Immaculate Conception. Obviously, not all of them taught Immaculate Conception. There were some that were not all for the Immaculate Conception, and that's another topic for another day. The fathers taught the Eucharist and baptism, regenerational baptism and all that stuff. And that's why I'm Catholic, is because the fathers taught the Catholic teachings, right? I'm not Catholic because it's easy or I'm comfortable, or it's really uncomfortable being a Catholic. And I know I'm supposed to be promoting it, but in a sense I am, because I want you to understand that what the church teaches is the most important thing about itself. the most important thing about the church is what it teaches, right? Try, if possible, to find a good church when it comes to the Catholic Church. There's really bad ones out there, and there's really good ones out there. I don't know where you live. I don't know what city you live in. Not that you need to tell me that, but try to find a good one, because there are very good ones out there. I go to a very good Catholic church. I go to a very, very good Catholic church. Faithful people, very tight-knit community. So I attend two churches because I'm Chaldean. So I attend the Chaldean Mass sometimes, and sometimes I'll attend a Latin Mass, right? So I kind of go back and forth to try to take both East and West traditions there. So I belong to two really good parishes, I would say, especially the Latin Mass one. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. I see the Holy Spirit working in that church. Anyway, I don't want to keep babbling on here. Let me look and see if there's any more questions. So far, nothing. Yeah, so, and then I kind of want to summarize for Mango Bango. I think the Eastern Orthodox, as far as aesthetics, and even Oriental Orthodox, as far as aesthetics go, they have a better sell, right? You can look at their churches like, wow, that just looks the most ancient. But looks can be deceiving because it's not about the way you look, it's about what you teach. And Thomas, I know you want me to get into Sixtus V, and Thomas brought this to my attention here. I didn't know this, which is pretty awesome, which I think fits in this video, and I appreciate you reminding me. Pope Sixtus was about to decree that a certain translation of the Bible is the best translation and the only, or like something like that, like no errors or something like that, like the only one that, and supposedly, if the story holds true, and I trust Thomas has the sources right here. I say that, sincerely, I do trust that. He died before he was able to decree, like a few days before. Now, in a sense, that doesn't fit into papal infallibility because that doesn't have to do with faith and morals. Decreeing something like that would probably not fall into faith and morals, but it would be a scandal, and I think a blow to papal infallibility on the surface if had he decreed it. The Catholics would have to answer that, like, oh, what do you guys say about this? So it's pretty awesome that he was. It's not awesome that he died, but it's awesome that he was stopped from decreeing something that was obviously false. Let me see here. Ryan Pope always asks good questions. Do we ultimately need the papacy to define doctrine? Or can the Orthodox make an argument they can define without it, even while not being able to call an ecumenical council? Well, the fathers believe that you can't define dogmas that pertain to the universal church without the Pope. And I'll be shown that. You have the popes who taught that explicitly in the early church, the popes that were saints in the Eastern Orthodox Church, popes that were saints in even Oriental Orthodox Church, right? Like, they believe that they were, without our consent, without what we say, you cannot decree that as a binding teaching. So yeah, according to the fathers, you do need the papacy to define doctrine. If you're going to say, I don't need the papacy on a practical level, okay, yeah, you don't need the papacy on a practical level, sure. You don't even need the bishops. I can decree something today, right? I mean, how it can get ridiculous. But we're talking about what the church fathers taught. And if the church fathers taught that Rome is necessary as the head of the church, the head must consent in order for something to be dogmatic. So if it's necessary, then it is necessary, right? We can't just make up our own version of it. Can the Orthodox make an argument they can define without it? Sure, why not? Go ahead, define all you want. Doesn't matter. You're playing house. You're not really defining anything that has real force behind it. You're just playing house. Even while not being able to call an ecumenical council. I don't know if the Orthodox have ever done that before, but can they? Again, sure, by all means, go ahead. But you're going against your own church fathers. You're going against your own saints who taught against that. So that's on them to prove that they're able to do that. But that's a very, very good question. I appreciate that. Let me see here. What do you think? I don't know if this question is for me, but this is a good question here. What do you think of the Coptic popes and the Orthodox patriarchs being friendly with Francis? I wasn't even aware that they were friendly. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I think there's a lot of friendliness in this world today, and like, let me just put it this way. There's a lot of like, let's be friendly to each other. Because that's the right thing to do. Let's be charitable to each other, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But it shouldn't go too far. Not that it is going too far with the Coptic popes, but we have to be careful with these ecumenist type of relationship, right? We don't want to compromise any of our teachings to bring people in. I don't like friendly. I'm not for ecumenical. Let me see here. Is there anything else? Did I miss anything? Wow, I mean, this started off as me trying to do a show on this question that keeps popping up, and I was planning on doing a few minutes. And the reason why I wanted to make it a few minutes is because I want somebody to see that on YouTube that is curious about that question. Like, let's say they type that into search. I don't know who would, but in case that pops up. And I want them to see the time as a few minutes so that they can answer, they can see the answer. Because sometimes you like look at these videos like, oh my goodness, it's an hour long. I'm not going to watch this whole thing. But I hope they know that I answered the question in the first 15, 20 minutes. I'm just scrolling up here, hoping I didn't miss anything. Alan Rule says he has to go. God bless you all. Thank you for these live streams. Alan, always nice to see you here. God bless you too, brother. And I know you're not watching anymore. But again, check out his YouTube show. Subscribe to it. And also subscribe to William Albrecht's YouTube show. I'm pretty sure everyone who subscribed to my show have already subscribed to William Albrecht's. But if you haven't, William Albrecht, he's on the chat. He has some fantastic stuff. This guy puts out like 3-hour videos on Christology, like the most nuanced stuff on the Trinity, refuting Muslims and Islam. I don't know how this guy has the time to like research this, let alone make this video. It takes so long, and you guys have to understand, this takes so long to do. It does take a lot of effort, a lot of time. And I'm married. I have a baby, and my wife's pregnant. We're expecting a second one, and it's only going to get harder, right? So pray for us, especially for William, because he does a lot more work than I'll ever be able to do. Subscribe to his channel. Which would be funner, Matt Slick versus Ubi or versus Dyer? Oh, versus Dyer. I think Ubi showed that he could put on a nice guy act. Dyer can't. He hasn't shown that he can. Well, let me rephrase that. He has shown that. He has some debates where he is nice. But against Matt Slick, there's no way. There's no way. He's not going to be nice to that guy. Anyway, I don't know if there's anyone still watching here. Let's see. Oh, we got still 22 people watching. I'm just rambling on. Sarmad is a friend of mine. He says, Elijah, I can't wait for your series on hell. So he suggests that series for me to do that. And that's going to be something that, God willing, that I'll be doing in the kind of a further future, because I have a lot of things planned in the works on the papacy and the Immaculate Conception. And then after those series are done, after I finish both of those, I'll be going into the Syriac fathers and their theology. Saint Ephraim and Saint Jacob. I'll be going into that aspect, and then after that, if I'm still alive, I'll God willing, we'll be doing series on hell. I'll probably do like one episode on it, because I'm not like the biggest expert, so it's going to take some research for me to dig up, and it's really a question about Father Barron and what he has to say on it. So I'll be doing research on that and getting into that topic. And I take requests. The reason why, if you're wondering, the reason why I answered will be Petrus is because a lot of people approached me and asked me to do that. So I looked at his videos and I'm like, okay, this is a bunch of garbage. This is not what we believe. So I, answered back his claims. MK Vine, what's your opinion on using Isaiah 22 as a type for Peter and the papacy? I think that's a phenomenal typology, right? I think Brother Swan does a great job, showing it. Where I think it needs work is, and I'm not saying this refutes it, right? I don't believe that refutes it, right? Where I think it needs work is that it doesn't have the explicit patristic backing behind it, right? So there are fathers who, like St. John Cassian and a couple of Syriac fathers, I believe. I think Ephraim is one of them. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. They teach it, right? They teach it, and it's there, the typology, and you can see it in there. And this is what I want to say, and I know that in the Ubi Petrus versus Brother Swan's debate, Ubi Petrus asks Swan for patristic evidence for it, and there wasn't much there, and he didn't really get into it. He just, basically said, we need to look at to see if the interpretation holds. Just because the fathers didn't teach it, or just because we don't have records of the fathers teaching it, because we don't have everything translated, then it doesn't mean it's falsified. And you have to understand that this is something that if you're going to see this teaching, this typology connection being made, you're going to see that in the Syriac fathers. And what people don't realize is that the Syriac fathers, their works, it's only been like translated, like 5% of it has been translated. Most of it hasn't been translated. So it could be out there somewhere. It just hasn't been translated, right? So, and maybe it's not out there. And here's what I want to say. I think, to me, this shows that this obsession about showing everything from the fathers, it needs to be tamed down just a tad bit, a little bit, right? And you might say, well, wait, hold on one second. What about the Protestants? They could say, hey, we don't have to show anything from the fathers. We can just go to the scriptures. But here's the thing. When the Protestants go to the scriptures, their understanding of the scriptures contradicts the church fathers. This typology doesn't contradict the church fathers. At best, it's, very seldomly looked at by the fathers from as far as the translations we have, but it's not a contradiction to the fathers. It's just silence, right? It's just silence. What was I going to say? Yeah. So it's just basically, there's just silence there from the fathers. So it doesn't mean it contradicts them. So it's different than a Protestant saying, oh, I don't need to use the fathers to prove my case. Well, yeah, you do, because the fathers are against your case. They're not silent on it, right? As far as the Eucharist, baptism, and I'm talking about like fundamental Protestants. I'm not really talking about like the high-end church Protestants, which are different animal to deal with, right? I'm not sure what Thomas is referring to when he says, Elijah, that's not true, but I would be interested in knowing where what I said that isn't true, so I can correct myself here. Let me see here. I love William's woodiness here. They claim that he was monothelite. This is just really interesting. I'm just like clicking these as I read them because it seems like there's a conversation here between William and maybe I would say Thomas because I see the word monothelite. Anyway, I have to go back and read this live chat at some point because this is really interesting stuff. Oh, the Syriac stuff and not being translated. That's what you're saying is not true. God bless you, William. I know you said you have to go. So, so as far as the Syriac works not being translated, I got this from Subdeacon Daniel, who said most of the works. I think he meant Ephraim, right? Let's be honest. Most of the Syriac writings come from Ephraim. The other Syriac fathers don't have much before 451, because that's the cutoff of the division between OOs and Catholics. So before that, it was mostly Ephraim's writings that we have from the Syriacs for the most part. And according to Subdeacon Daniel, who is a Syriac Orthodox in the seminary, he's almost ready to be a priest. He says that most of Ephraim's works haven't been translated, so that's where I'm getting that from. Now, if that's wrong, I apologize, and that's something I'd have to go and check with Subdeacon and seeing what he meant by that. Maybe I misunderstood him, and I'm misrepresenting him. So, and I said 5%. That's just an exaggeration. And I haven't read Cyril Benham's works, so maybe I should check that out. So if you guys can, help clarify what the relevance of that is, maybe in the comment section, I'd really appreciate that. Let me see. John is also saying this same thing here. So let me see what this is here. Areas of Egypt use Peter as a new Moses, fabrication. Any thoughts? I don't know anything about that, to be honest with you. That's something I could look into because that sounds very fascinating. I know that I believe Saint Ephrem uses that. Now, I will say this: the Eastern Orthodox Church in their liturgy call Peter the new Moses. So there's something there, right? In the Syriac tradition, there's something there in the Syriac tradition. I don't know when those prayers were written. I don't know what year they were written, but that's something there. That's all I know about that. And sometimes the prayers come from quotes from the Syriac fathers. And yeah, so Thomas is saying the same thing here. Yeah, I'll ask Subdeacon about this, or maybe you can message me, Thomas, and tell me more about it if you'd like, because my understanding is that most of, I guess I'll say Ephraim's writing, St. Ephraim's, hasn't been translated, but that could be wrong. Now, I did have a friend of mine. There is this quote from St. Ephrem where he says about the Immaculate Conception, to you, you and your son, talking about Mary, are the only ones who are basically immaculate. I'm like butchering it. But that whole hymn has never been translated before. And my friend who knows Syriac translated it, and it's very fascinating to read that hymn. So when he sent that to me, I was really excited to read it. I was trying to see what the context is, and I'm still trying to unpack that. And that's Saint Ephrem for you. He's just very deep. Father Robert Murray says in his book that the Syriac High Petrine never was Rome and was their own patriarch. Yeah, I would concede that point. I would concede that point as well. But again, that's an argument from, and I will say this: if you can show me where the Syriacs prior to 451, because I'd be interested in that, because I had a conversation with Subdeacon Daniel about this, and we got into whether they looked at Peter transferring his seat to Antioch or even to Alexandria, right? And Subdeacon Daniel didn't have anything to provide as far as like references. So if you have anything, Thomas, and I don't mean to throw Subdeacon is a very good friend of mine. I was in, I don't want to say where I went, but I used to live in the state, and I visited there again. This is what I talked about earlier. My microphone was in my suitcase and my camera, but I visited there, and I had lunch with Subdeacon Daniel when I was out there a couple of weeks ago. So I haven't seen him in years. So that was really cool. But just recently, we were just talking about this. So if you have any references to where the Syriac fathers specifically say that the seat of Peter was transferred to Antioch or Alexandria in any reference, right? Anyway, I'd appreciate seeing that, because to my understanding, the Syriac fathers not only did not attribute it to Rome, they didn't attribute it to anybody. They just have this high Petron idea of Peter being the leader, but they don't like say that this whole office went somewhere. They just leave it there. Yes, that's a plan. I am going to do that as well, and God willing, I'll have R&T crew here at one point as well. Let me see here. What else do we have? And also, one day I'd probably like to get Swan Sona on here as well. But Matt Fradd has over 100,000, well over 100,000 subscribers. So any subscriber to Matt Fradd, any subscriber to my channel probably subscribes to Matt Fradd. So I wouldn't be adding anything if Swan comes in here and gives his presentation again. But maybe he can come on here and we can talk about something else that was outside of what he was talking about with Matt Fradd. But let's see here. I'm trying to see if there's any more question. Who would win in a boxing match? Michael Diamond versus Jay Dyer. I think we would all win. We would all win as the audience. Let me see. What are your thoughts on Theodore Mikura's high Petrine view and potential Orthodox objections? I like that quote. I think that one is a good quote for the papacy side, right? Especially since he's an Eastern person, right? And he's full blown about it. This is going so long here. Just out of curiosity, is the Chaldean Catholic liturgy similar to the Assyrian church? I mean, it depends on what you mean by similar. It's not as similar as I'd like it to be. I think the Assyrians do a lot better job at keeping their traditions, maintaining their traditions. So it's similar in the sense that if you had never seen any of them and you walk in to the Assyrian church and you walk into the Chaldean church, you're probably not going to notice as many differences as someone like me would, because I've been to the Chaldean, and I don't mean that in a condescending way. I've just been to the Chaldean Mass so many times that I can spot the differences. So yeah, it is similar in a sense, and it's not in another sense. The Chaldean Mass, unfortunately, has been Novus Ordoized in a sense, right? Now they have they have females that give out the Eucharist, which is unfortunate. They have females that do the prayers on the altar, not on the altar, but like, I mean, they're on the altar, but there's like a podium. But I guess there is a place for that, kind of, sorta, in the Chaldean history, or you know, there are deaconesses, but usually they're like basically the choir. But yeah, the Assyrians receive on the hand, by the way, if you didn't know that, that's the way they traditionally have always received. That's the way the Chaldeans have traditionally received. The Chaldeans receive on the hand today because of COVID, but there are some Chaldean parishes that I've been a part of that receive on the tongue, for the most part, before COVID. And I know Thomas has asked post or pre. I'm talking about pre 451, because I think I know what you're talking about. My question to you about my question to you about what was I asking you about? Oh, the Syriacs, what they believed where Peter's seat was transferred to. Pre 451 would be good if you have anything like that. That would be really good, because I'm really interested in looking at that. And I appreciate your kind words, Zarkar. My wife probably thinks that I'm annoying as far as my sense of humor goes, but I appreciate that. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that as well, Thomas. Yeah, the Chaldean liturgy is just beautiful. It's just not as beautiful as it should be, because it used to be more ancient, and then they modernized it a little bit. No more ad orientem. Very unfortunate. Okay, so I think this is a good place to end. I'm just babbling on now at this point, and I can't believe there's still people watching. I haven't really said much. I haven't really said much here at the end, but let me just, there's nothing else here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end this. I appreciate everyone's cooperation, as comments, questions, listening. Please pray for me. Pray for my wife, 4.5 months pregnant. I would really appreciate that. And we will see you all in a few days when the fun starts. And don't forget to watch the first 2 videos on the papal infallibility that I did against Ubi Petrus before you watch the third one. So if you haven't done that yet, please do, because the third one is going to be the most fun. That's where the fun stuff starts. That's where the meat is. So please do that. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate when you guys do subscribe. I can't believe I have like 340 subscribers. I thought I was going to have like 50, because I was really doing this mostly for people that asked me to go against Ubi, and then I wanted to do the Immaculate Conception stuff as well, because that's a passion of mine. But we'll see what happens in the future. God bless you all. You all have a good night, and peace out.